Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully you can hear me.
Hey everybody, happy Monday.
Hello, here we are. You can now see us and hear us, hopefully. Please let us know if that is not the case. Sorry for the late start. I had a busy day today. Got home a little later than I expected and didn't have the chance to post about the stream on Instagram and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a scramble to get everything going. Panic Roll, how's it going?
Hey Panic.
So, tonight we are starting off the Geek Out session by chatting about Renaissance fairs to start off with. That was actually a request by Panic Roll that we do this.
Good choice.
And we will probably dovetail into Game of Thrones. I'll probably talk about LARP a little bit because it's hard for me to talk about Renaissance fairs without talking about LARP. Thrift Store LARPer, thanks very much for following. That's awesome. We appreciate it. Thrift Store LARPer, speaking of LARP, is a friend of mine in real life. She's a YouTuber.
Nice.
And she has a great video series on YouTube about going to thrift stores, finding props, and
I've actually seen a couple of them. We follow
perfect.
each other on Instagram and stuff, so check
awesome.
out a couple of videos.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Hello. Let's talk about some Renaissance fairs first. Let's start there.
Okay.
And then that will lead us into the Game of Thrones talk. So I love Renaissance fairs.
I've never been to one.
You've never been to one?
I never have.
Oh my goodness. Okay, we're going to fix that.
Yeah, I
Because
definitely want to go.
There's one here in Escondido at the end of April, beginning of May.
Oh, really?
It's like a 2-weekend deal. It's small enough that it's not overwhelming, but there's a fair amount of stuff going on.
This is the one at the
Felicita Park,
okay,
yeah.
right, nice.
Yep.
Yeah. I've known of it. I've just never... I never knew it. I always heard about it after it already ended.
Right.
Yeah.
The reason that I love Renaissance... Well, first off, I've been going to Renaissance Fair since I was a kid.
Nice.
I think I went to my first one when I was probably 8 in Cedar City, Utah. And I always remember it. I was obsessed with Robin Hood at the time, so I always went dressed as Robin Hood for the first few years.
Nice.
And there was this young lady. She was probably... I don't know. She was probably late teenagers or whatever. But I had the biggest crush on her because she wore this really fancy white gown and everything like that. And, she always joked around that she was Maid Marian and I was Robin Hood and everything. And so she was really cool about the whole thing. She humored me for sure.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. Something about it just always stuck with me.
Yeah.
So, and I love going in costume. I've got a bunch of garb from a lot of the LARP that I do. So there's kind of the crossover for me. And I love being able to go in costume and there isn't any expectation on me. I can just go in costume, I can enjoy everything. I don't have to put on a performance or anything like that. I'm just kind of there.
Right.
Kind of adding to the experience for people who are not big geeks like I am. So they don't show up with armor and weapons and stuff like that. They're just kind of showing up in normal clothes. So more people, the more attendees that show up in costume, the better the experience is for the average goer.
Right.
Attendee, the average goer. Fair goer, I should say. So yeah, I don't know. That's just me. Casher says, I love Ren fairs. And Casher, let me know if I'm wrong. You've been to the big Bristol Ren fair out in the Midwest, right? Well, she answers that.
Is that the largest one in the country or something? Or?
I don't know if it's the largest one in the country, but they've got standing structures that they use for the Ren Fair every year,
That's
and they're kind of in a Tudor style with the kind of the whitewashed facade with the wooden beams exposed, kind of framing the walls and windows and stuff. So it's definitely one of the bigger ones.
Okay.
Actually, the picture that we've got as the splash page here is of, I believe, the Bristol Ren Fair, and it's the joust that goes on there. So it's such a big event that they've got a regular joust, they've got standing structures. It's a production.
So do they joust at all of them? Is this the local one? Is it big enough to joust? I know the area is pretty big, but I don't know.
I don't think they can joust there because it's a public park, and so they can't have the horses running around on there.
Okay.
There was an event called the Tournament of the Phoenix that would happen in Poway every year. And Sarah and I would go to that, and that was full-on jousting. That was actually part of a tournament circuit.
Oh, wow.
That was like a global circuit that they did every year, and it was just one leg of it. And it was a really great event. And then they had some kind of a problem with the insurance or something like that. and so they weren't able to
Yeah.
get in there and like continue doing the event out here. They still do it the other legs like out in Europe and stuff like that, but we're bummed that it doesn't happen here anymore.
Yeah, that's not cool. I get it, but it's not cool.
Panic Roll, I've never been to one. You should go. Actually, we'll talk. Maybe we can set up a little outing for the next one so that we can go together, because I really do love them. And again, the Escondido Renaissance Fair is the right size to kind of go and experience what a Ren Fair is and determine if you like them and you want to go to some of the bigger ones or not. There are a couple of large events. There's one in Irwindale. Escondido, or it's not Escondido, it's the Irwindale, I think it's just Irwindale Renaissance Fair or Pleasure Fair or something like that. That one's really good. Panic Roll, they use wooden lances so that they will shatter on impact. They can still unseat a jouster, but they are meant to shatter on impact, so they're not actually killing anybody. Because if you were to use a rigid metal lance in these things, you would hurt people pretty much every time. Kashira, that's correct. Used to live out that way, and most of my friends worked there over the summer, so I went a lot. It's a permanent location. I think it's huge. I've spent many happy days there. Yeah, I can see that. Especially because I think it goes on for like a couple weeks at a time, like 2-3 weeks or something like that.
That's cool.
So it's the kind of thing where if you wanted to, you could just go there every day for a few days.
Get some real deep immersion into it. That would be kind of awesome.
Yeah.
So my question, and I hate to be this guy, but
yeah,
how's the food?
So the food is largely dependent on the specific event and the specific year, because usually, so like the Escondido Renaissance Fair, they've got food vendors that will come out, and they're kind of regular, so they're there every year.
Okay.
But depending on the year, if one vendor can't afford to make it out, they might give a new vendor, or they might just have fewer vendors. Usually it's like kind of stereotypical like Chinese food. Usually there'll be turkey legs. Okay. Sometimes you'll get people who do like the medieval style meat pies, which some of them are really good. There was one at an event we went to recently, Sarah and I, and it was like a curry chicken meat pie.
Sounds awesome.
Oh man, it was great. On a hot day after like walking around in armor for a couple hours, it was great.
Yeah.
Thrift Store Larper says Southern California Renaissance Pleasure Fair is Irwindale. That's what it's called. And that one is really big. I would say it's easily 4 times the size of the Escondido Fair.
Oh, wow. Where's Irwindale? I'm not.
It's north of us. It's still in California, but it's north of us. Probably just a little bit north of like what most people consider to be LA.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually pretty easy to get to on the 15 from here.
Oh,
so
cool.
Meat pies, turkey legs. Cashier says stewed mushrooms are the best.
Sounds good.
Oh, so the Bristol Ren Fair runs for 2 months, and they have the best stewed mushrooms, is what Cashier said.
Oh wow.
Turkey legs. I gotta be honest, I've never really been a big fan of turkey legs. Like, they're okay. I don't get what everybody's all going on about them, but don't take that as me throwing shade. If you like the turkey legs, get the turkey legs.
For me, it's more like the imagery of it, I guess. You're like walking around with the turkey leg.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's big enough to be a cudgel. You could like club someone into unconsciousness with it.
Yeah.
Cashier says, don't forget the ubiquitous medieval food, tempura shrimp. Pretty much. But I will say, tempura shrimp at those things usually is really good. I don't know why, but I love it out at those vendors. So yeah, I mean, Renaissance fairs. There's a lot going on. Usually you've got like stage performances. It might be people belly dancing. It might be people telling or doing like stand-up routines. Some of them a little bit more ribald and body than other stand-up routines. There's usually like puppet shows for the kids and stuff like that. They'll usually have some kind of like combat events where like people from different guilds will get up in their armor and whatnot, and they will go fight each other. It's a little bit more choreographed. It's not like it's a true like, oh, we're gonna fight to see who wins. Usually it's like a this group is gonna win, and they kind of just go through the general.
Is it kind of like the thing that goes on outside on the pavilion area of like Comic-Con, the where they're actually?
So no, that is different. That's called the Society for Creative Anachronism, or SCA.
Okay.
And that fighting is for real. Like they're they've got wooden weapons, whereas in Ren fairs they usually have like steel weapons. But because they're doing kind of sort of modified stage combat, they're not really hitting as hard as they can with the steel weapons, and so it's safer. Okay. You can not worry as much about getting hurt, and as a result, you don't have to have the same like armor requirements to do that kind of stuff for Ren fairs. Okay. Whereas for the SCA, they have very specific requirements what you have to be wearing in order to fight. Yeah. Because they're going in and they're wailing on each other as hard as they can.
Yeah, that's what I was asking, because I remember there was a couple little kids, I think, a couple of years ago that were going at it.
Yes, and I was just had like the padded sticks, and they were, San Diego Comic-Con does an SCA kind of demo every year. That's what we're talking about. It's really good. Panic Girl says, do they sword fight? Blunted swords, obviously, and answered. Hey, look. So yes, they do. A lot of them will usually have like an archery range type of thing where you can go and they're modern bows and arrows, but you can still do a little bit of archery.
That's cool.
At the Ren fairs, you can do axe throwing at a lot of them. Some of them will have like a dunking booth, so you can try to knock somebody into the water. It just depends on the fair. They all have slightly different setups and attractions, but
and I'm sure they have like beer gardens, that kind of a thing.
Yeah. The beers and the meads and stuff like that are very, very popular. It's not my thing. I think it makes for things being a little bit too rambunctious, but that's me. Yeah.
I mean, I think I'd probably have to have one if I were there, just because.
Right, and like Sarah usually will do that too, where she'll be like, "Ooh, I want to try this mead, or I want to try this, this kind of ale, or whatever." So, it definitely adds to the atmosphere for people who like to drink. It's just not my thing. Yeah. So. What are the etiquette rules? So basically, Panic Roll, the etiquette rules are don't be a jerk. If you go into the Renaissance Fair and someone's in costume, there's nothing wrong with being like, hey, your costume looks great. How did you make that? Where did you buy it? Most people at these events are fine with those questions. Most of them, quite frankly, love talking about their gear because they put time and effort and money into it. But walking up and just like touching someone's armor or their sword or whatever, it's basically the same thing as someone walking up and like trying to put their hand in your pocket. It's really not cool. Yeah. So you don't want to do that. Also, generally speaking, I mean, if you don't like someone's costume, don't say anything. Just walk by, let them go about their business, enjoy the rest of the event. So Renaissance fairs, as opposed to the SCA, which I just mentioned as an example, Renaissance fairs tend to be not super strict about historical accuracy in their attendees. Some of the guilds are very strict about it. Like, if you want to be part of a certain guild, you might have to wear armor from a certain era, from a certain, like, European culture, and things like that. Right. Other guilds, you can show up and you can be, like, a Celtic fairy type character with, like, antlers tied into your hair and fairy wings and, whatever. So, Renaissance fairs are a little bit more lax. They really have become more fantasy pop culture fairs in a lot of cases, more so than really true Renaissance. Okay. Because what most people think of when they think of the Renaissance fairs is like people in full plate armor and stuff like that walking around, and that's actually not really Renaissance. Renaissance is like the really big poofy skirted gowns, and the big cod pieces and stuff like that. And so, well, most people think
that's like the Dark Ages fair,
right? Exactly. It's more like medieval ages fair. And so Renaissance fairs have just kind of come to accept that people are going to show up wearing a variety of different things, some of them historically accurate, some of them not, and they're cool with that.
I like that. Sounds fun.
Nothing truly like, blatantly vulgar. Usually they frown on that kind of stuff. They're fine with like t-shirts that have slogans that are like innuendos and whatnot. They don't shy away from that style of humor. So that's usually okay as long as, again, you're not being a total jerk about it. Technically, you can't have a medieval Renaissance event. They're two different time periods. Exactly. Yeah, that's the thing. So, in your endo, nice, Kashura. Real mature. Jeez.
Zing.
No, our stream is good. I thought it cut out there. So yeah, etiquette again is pretty straightforward. As far as like when you're walking around the event, usually the people that are there as performers or members of the guild, they will usually actually have a tent set up in the camping area. And so there's, like, usually, at least at the Escondido Renaissance Fair, you'll be walking around the booths and stuff like that and the vendors, and then, you'll take a couple steps past the last vendor stall, and you're kind of in the middle of a campsite for one of the guilds that's actually right there on site. And usually they're in character, meaning they've got like signs saying, "Oh, this is our guild." They'll have banners. They'll have fur carpets thrown out, and period style seating and tables and things like that. And when it comes to stuff like that, you would treat it the same way you would treat somebody's home. Like, you don't step across that threshold if it's roped off, unless you've specifically been invited. Generally speaking, if people are hanging out in their camp area, don't approach them and start bothering them. If you're cool about it, most of them are probably going to be fine, but they're usually on a break, so let them take their break type of thing. So I mean, it's just common sense, common courtesy type stuff. If you do come in armor with a sword or a bow or whatever, they will probably ask you to peace tie your sword, because they don't want people getting drunk and going, "Oh, sword fight me," and drawing their sword and swinging at people. So when they peace tie it, literally all they do is they take a piece of string, they tie your sword to your belt so you can't easily pull it out, and that is usually enough to dissuade drunken idiots from trying to sword fight the people there. Thrift Store LARPer says Vegas Ren Fair is super casual. Even a lot of the booth merchants and performers don't garb up. The historical stuff is in the back of the fair. Oh, okay, interesting. So that's a different vibe for me at a Ren Fair than I'm used to. But to each their own. Each event is a little bit different. Cashra, thank you. I'm here all stream. The Vegas fair is pretty big. They have jousting. That's cool. Yeah, I love the jousting events, honestly.
Yeah, that'd be cool to see.
Like, I remember going in high school, I went to medieval... Have you ever been to Medieval Times?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I went to the Excalibur King Arthur's tournament.
I think it's pretty much the same thing, yeah. And I enjoyed that event, but it was very clear who was going to win. Like, It was very clear that it was, like, staged and, set up ahead of time. And the Blue Knight didn't win, and I'm really annoyed about it, because he should have won, because he was the best. Anyways.
$2 on the Red Knight, that's all I'm saying.
I think it was the White Knight who won, which I guess fine,
No.
But still, the Blue Knight should have won that one. But yeah, I love the jousting events and stuff like that. They're so cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome to see.
But, so let's talk a little bit about something similar or kind of related to Renaissance fairs, and that is Game of Thrones. How are they related? Because there's armor in both. Just go with it. The premiere of Game of Thrones Season 8 was yesterday, so we're going to talk about that a little bit with no spoilers. No spoilers. We will not mention names. We'll just talk in general terms.
Yeah.
Panic Girl immediately yelled, "Spoilers!"
Yeah. Not ruining nothing for nobody.
So you're the bigger Game of Thrones fan, actually.
Yeah.
This is the first full episode I've watched since Season 1.
Oh, wow.
So
nice.
What were your...
It was great. Opinions? It was a great setup. I'm really excited, but also I'm really sad that I didn't get the realization of that it's over after the season set in. So I'm kind of bummed out. I know they're doing a spin-off, but it's just not the same.
Yeah, so. A friend of mine at work who's really into it, she said the same thing. She's like, "Yeah, I know they're doing a spin-off, but I don't know if I'm going to watch it." Yeah. And I think it's really going to depend on what... I don't think they've announced any details for it, have they?
They have a couple of casting choices, but that's it.
Okay.
So that doesn't really tell anything. It just this actor's in it. That's
right.
The type of thing.
I feel like they have to pick very, very specific, narrow, list of characters they can pull from in order to make it the spinoff appealing to people. Because you don't want to make the spinoff something where it's immediately after everything that happens in the main show and invalidates that. Like, you can't have someone come in and kill Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen. That's not a spoiler because it's not actually happening. I'm saying that as an example.
Right.
But you can't have someone come in the spinoff and kill those two off, because then everybody who is invested in the main show is going to be pissed.
Oh, yeah.
So it's got to be something either significantly after that, or significantly before that, or significantly in a different part of the world.
So that's the leading theory, is that it's like 500 years in the future. I'm not I've never read the books or anything, so I don't know all the historical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But there is I want to call it like the Time of Kings or something. I don't know. Apologies if I got that wrong. But there's like a different era that's like really popular, and I think they're supposed to be focusing on that or something.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's what they're doing, but I don't know. I'll probably check it out just because.
Right.
But I don't know. We'll see.
So if you're a fan of Game of Thrones, sound off in the comments who your favorite character is up until this point. It doesn't matter if they're living or dead. I would say don't say if they're dead, just because that might be a spoiler. Just say who your favorite character is, and if you're interested, general reasons as to why. Panic Girl says Sandor. Yes, Sandor Clegane. That's the Mountain. No, the Hound, right?
Yep.
The Mountain is his older brother. I can kind of agree with that, because what little I know of the show and the books is Sandor Clegane is not a nice guy at the beginning. Like, he's widely regarded to be like one of the worst people in Westeros.
Yeah,
Like,
I think
by
that's
reputation.
It's a fair assessment.
His brother's worse, but the Hound is not a great guy.
Yeah.
And he serves the Lannisters at that point in time, and like he's just generally regarded to be on the bad guy's side.
Yeah.
And then as the show goes on, as the books go on, he kind of evolves, and you get to know him a little bit more, and you start to like him a little bit more. And he kind of, I don't know if he redeems himself, but he starts in that direction at the very least.
I mean, it definitely, there's like actually quite a few characters that I think kind of have that arc that when you first watch it, they're just like deplorable human beings.
Oh, yeah.
You can't wait for them to be eradicated. And then, getting to season 8, you're like, pulling for that character. So it's interesting how it did that, the show.
Yeah.
Like,
well, I know that, Okay, so this is not a spoiler, because this happens like episode 1 or 2. Jaime Lannister.
Brianna Tarth.
Like, he is one of those people who starts off, you're just like, oh, this guy's a terrible person.
Oh, yeah.
There's no way this guy could... He pushes a freaking kid out a window.
Yeah.
Like, come on. But by the time it gets back around to where we are, start of season 8, he's a very different person.
Yeah. Most people love him now.
Yeah. And I can kind of see why. Like, once you kind of learn why he was dubbed the Kingslayer, and the story behind that, and like you're like, oh, okay, this guy has done some terrible, terrible things, but he's not a terrible, terrible person. I don't know how they manage that, but they do.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Cheeky Ellie says Brienne of Tarth and Sansa Stark. Brienne of Tarth is a badass.
Yeah, she is.
Like, every single time I've seen a clip of her, I'm like, she's freaking cool.
Yeah.
So I can agree with that one. Bran waiting up like an emo kid to prank Jaime when he arrived. Yeah, so we're trying to avoid too many spoilers. But yes, that was a good moment.
Yes, it was.
The look on Jaime's face when he like made eye contact was like, okay,
yeah.
I like that. Panic Roll says the mountain. I mean the Mountain. I get the brothers mixed up. The Mountain's a terrible person. How can he be your favorite character?
Because he squashed that guy like a grape.
No, that doesn't make him a good character. Like, you don't want to. Anyways, I will say though, the guy who plays the Mountain apparently is just like one of the coolest guys around.
Yeah, everybody loves him.
He's humongous.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen pictures of him and his wife?
Yeah. His wife looks like
she's like a hobbit compared to a freaking like Goliath. Like,
I think he
crazy.
just won the most recent World's Strongest Man too.
Oh, did he really?
Yeah, I think so.
That would not surprise me.
Yeah.
He is huge.
Yeah.
Because Hathor is a great human being. Yeah, now see, that I can agree with you. The actor who plays the Mountain is a legitimately good person from everything that I've heard. Cheeky Ellie, sorry, I just logged on and missed any mention of spoilers. No problem. We're talking about it in vague terms because it just came out yesterday. We don't want to spoil anything huge. I don't think what you said is a big deal because everybody knew that was going to happen eventually, so,
that actually caught me by surprise, and I loved it. It was great.
I'll be honest, when he wrote in, like, with the cloak, with the hood up, I thought it was a totally different character that we had seen earlier in the show. I thought it was Theon.
Yeah.
It was like, man, they really are like hand waving the travel times with this one because like there's no way. But that
was great.
Yeah, it turned out to be Jaime, so that was good. Let's see. So yeah, the reason we're talking about Game of Thrones kind of in relation to Renaissance fairs is because holy cow, the costumes.
Yeah.
This is the first episode I've seen in a long time, But Daenerys Targaryen's coat in this is freaking stunning. I love that thing.
You know, I've never seen her in an outfit that didn't look like somebody spent hours and hours and days on. Like, every one of her outfits are amazing.
Even early on, like before she became,
you know,
Daenerys Targaryen, and she was, just like what's his name's little sister. Even though then she like her outfits were pretty good, like high quality. So, how realistic are the sets of armor? Okay, so not coming from someone who doesn't have a huge education in history and stuff like that, but I've studied this stuff a bit for my LARPing, for my Renaissance Fair stuff, for my SCA stuff, and just being a nerd in general. I had the old 2nd edition Arms and Equipment Guide, and where it listed out and gave like in-depth historical descriptions of all the weapons.
I still got that book.
Do you really?
Yeah.
Oh man, I would love to see that again. It's so good. Their armor is fairly realistic. There are some scenes and shots where you can tell that like some of the leather armor they're wearing is very clearly costume armor.
Yeah.
Because it's so thin, it wouldn't be functional in any way, shape, or form. But generally speaking, the armor looks functional. It doesn't have like crazy pauldrons or like big horns on the helms and stuff like that. Generally speaking, big protrusions off of your helmet are a really bad idea, because even if someone misses your head when they're swinging at you with the giant axe, if they catch your horns and that thing is strapped on, it's still going to break your neck or incapacitate you. So, like, most helmets are streamlined. They're sleek. They're usually tapered in some capacity to cause the weapons to deflect off of them.
Early stealth technology.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you didn't show up on radar. That's what it was for. But I see a lot of those, like, functional, realistic design elements in a lot of the armor that they wear. So, yeah. Hard to get through... Yeah, if you've got big horns on your helmet, it's hard to get through doorways as well. Although, historically speaking, they didn't so much mind when, like, they put women in those dresses with the weird hoop. Like a
hoop
skirts
versus basket.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
That.
And like you couldn't get through doors in those either very easily. It turned sideways and stuff like that. So that might be historically accurate, just not on a helmet.
They just look really cool. The horns.
They do look cool, and they look kind of intimidating. But it just not very realistic. But even like Jon Snow's armor, because he doesn't really wear, from what I've seen, he doesn't really wear plate or anything. He's more wearing like kind of thick furs and leather armor. So in Dungeons and Dragons terminology, he's wearing kind of like hide armor.
Yeah.
And that, again, looks fairly realistic. It's kind of bulky, but still easy enough for him to move around in.
Yeah, I mean, he's a ranger, and that's kind of how he's equipped,
Exactly. He's not meant to be a paladin. Let's see. Upper class, though, for fashion, not function. Yeah, exactly. So those hoop skirts were definitely not meant to be functional or, logical. I get that reference. That's funny. But yeah, generally speaking, even the weapons are pretty accurate for the most part. Like, Jon Snow's sword, I could easily see picking that up and fighting with it. Needle, Arya's sword, again, it's basically a rapier.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more on the end of like being a side sword, which
it's kind of almost like a parry type thing.
Yeah, because it's not as long as a traditional legit rapier,
right.
So that's why I was saying it's more of like a side sword, which is a type of sword that like naval officers wore and they used. So, when you're watching like Pirates of the Caribbean and you've got Commander Norrington draws his sword, he's wielding a side sword. It's not curved like a cutlass. It's a straight blade. It's not as long as a rapier, but it's very fast and, dexterous like a rapier would be.
Right.
So that's kind of the difference there. But I could totally, again, I could see picking up her sword and fencing with it.
There are some weapons, though, in Game of Thrones that are just crazy fantasy weapons.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, any sword that lights on fire, not...
They don't come like that?
No, sadly. I know. I was so disappointed when I first learned that.
The White Walkers use, I think their weapons are actually like ice blades. Which
of course.
It's not going to...
But that's thematic. That's meant to be unrealistic.
And then, again, the dragon glass blades, it's obsidian.
Those look... So, like...
I'm not stopping nothing with that.
When I saw a couple of those dragon glass blades, and I was like, oh, man, those do not look like they would be very functional.
Yeah.
You get maybe one good kill out of those, and then the blade would shatter, or if someone deflected it, they would chip really bad. It's dragon glass, so it's stronger than normal glass, I know. But anyways. Sam's sword. I haven't seen Sam's sword, actually. I don't know what that looks like. Yeah.
Is a really, he also has one of the only Valerian steel blades.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah. So it's a nice sword. It's a good solid broadsword.
Okay, I'll have to take a look at that. Casher says Die Hard 2 proves you can use ice as a weapon. Yeah, but it's only useful once. Once you've stabbed the dude in the eyeball with it, that icicle is no longer useful against anybody else. Yeah. So yes, ice could be used as a weapon. It's just not very practical. But yeah, overall their costume design, the armors, the weapons that they use are all really good. And I think for the most part they all make sense for like the culture or the area that the particular houses are from, because they've all got their own kind of feel. Like the people from the Iron Islands, they have lighter armor, like leathers and stuff like that, because they're on ships. Heavy armor, if you fall into the water, you're probably going to die because you're going to drown. But, they do a pretty good job with it, I think.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Lots of, I'm sure they did tons of research into it, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure they did. And, George R.R. Martin is not exactly known for his lack of detail, so he probably did a lot of the research early on, so that when he was explaining to them, like, these are the kinds of things that you want to consider when you're designing costumes for this group of people, he probably had a lot of those notes already.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
So. Again,
I've never read the books, but from what I understand, he's pretty descriptive with everything as well, so, like, almost overly descriptive from what
I mean, he's taken how long to write this next book?
I was talking to my buddy. Apparently, he still owes everybody 2 books.
Yeah,
I was
that's
like,
what I heard.
Good luck waiting for those.
Panic Girl says, almost forgot my weekly update on dinner. Tonight's bratwurst and sauerkraut. Oh, you had me at bratwurst, you lost me at sauerkraut.
I'm in for both. That's great.
Sauerkraut is so gross.
What are you talking about? It's delicious.
No, it's terrible.
So good, especially with the broth. I am envious.
I do love bratwurst. I won't lie. So yeah. But speaking of like Ren Fairs and then Game of Thrones, I mentioned LARP earlier. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about it because I love LARP. LARP is kind of that perfect opportunity to take some of the cool stuff you see in Game of Thrones and similar shows and be like, you know what? I want to try that out for reals. I want to wear that armor and wield a weapon like that, and I want to see if I can make it work.
Yeah.
And you find out really quickly whether or not like certain armor designs are like just completely the realm of fantasy, or if they're functional or not. Because the first time you go to like lift up your arm to like swing your sword and your pauldron like pokes you in the face, you're not going to do that anymore.
Looking at you, Sauron.
Yeah, exactly. Usually a lot of anime armor has those crazy things where they've got spikes coming out of the shoulder pad that are perfectly poised, where if you shrug, like you're poking yourself in the ears and impaling yourself in the face. Or they've got those crazy big helmets, or whatever. So LARP is a great opportunity to kind of try some of that stuff out and be like, oh, I want to see what it's like to be a knight in full plate armor, going out there with my sword and my shield and hacking through hordes of enemies, which I've done, and it is the best. I shouldn't say the best. I haven't played a pure caster in a LARP before. I'm sure that's great fun, but I love the physical aspect of playing a combat character. I played a kind of a light armored fighter as my first true LARP character, and it was dual wielding. Like I had 2 gladiuses, gladii. I think it's gladii is the proper pluralization of that. And I'd never done any 2-weapon fighting. I'd done sword and shield when I was in the SCA, and I'd done some single-weapon fencing fighting when I was in the SCA. I never did any 2-weapon stuff until I started this character. And boy, I learned how to fight real quick like that, because I was dying very fast.
I bet. That's a different skill set altogether.
It is. And there's no real way to do it really well on a short amount of time to learn. Like, most fencing masters start off with single sword for a reason, and then they go sword and dagger when they're fighting 2 weapons. Fighting with 2 weapons of the same length, like, it's not something that you really see in true historical manuals very much, because it was a terrible idea.
Right. Again, something that looks cool, but
it's
not that
it looks super flashy. But I was able to make it work. And I had several people ask me to teach them how to do it, and I was like, I don't know, man. I just made it up as I went along. So, that was fun.
That's cool.
But then after that, I did a lot of NPC roles, like non-player character roles,
Right.
where I was like heavy armor fighter. So I would be in plate mail and stuff like that, usually wielding a big two-handed sword or a sword and shield. And
So-
sword and shield is my absolute favorite way to fight.
How does that work when you're doing the NPC character? Is it kind of like you're given like an assignment, don't let these guys pass without a fight type of thing, and then you're kind of supposed to just offer some resistance, but eventually let them through type of thing, or like how does that work out?
Yeah, so it depends on the game,
Right.
and it depends on the specific story event that's taking place. And Thrift Store LARPer, please, if you're still around, feel free to chime in on this, because you probably have more expertise in this area than I do. But generally speaking, it's the kind of thing where you've got two types of NPCs. So when the plot team, writes out a story arc and they write out an event and the story for the event, they'll be like, okay, these are generic kind of mob NPCs.
Okay.
These are special NPCs, they're bosses, they're named NPCs, they're important. So usually the mob NPCs will be given directions just like you said. Go out there, the players are going to try to get into, the cave and they're going to try to get the crystal thing. Don't let them get, you're there to stop them from getting the crystal, put up some resistance, but usually there are so few NPCs compared to players, you're going to lose.
Right.
It's just a matter of kind of like giving them a bit of a fight, making them work for it.
Right.
It's very rare in those kinds of situations for a player character to be killed, or for a player's character to be killed. The player characters are never killed, but players are never killed. But the player's characters might be killed. But it's rare in those situations because, generally speaking, you're supposed to let the heroes be heroes, let them accomplish stuff,
Right.
stuff like that, make them feel heroic. So you want to give just enough resistance to make them feel like, holy crap, if that fight had gone on another minute, I would have definitely died.
Right.
But still letting them kind of pull out of that fight as the victor.
Okay.
And then you've got the important NPCs. These are the big bad guys. These are the lieutenants to the big bad guys. These are the ones where, the NPC document is like 3 pages of half a page of stats and the rest of it is all, these are your motivations. These are the people that you would know on sight. This is why you don't like those people. This is, and it goes into all this stuff so that if you get drawn into a conversation with the players, you can answer questions, you can, give your side of things. And those characters, usually, when they're, let loose to go fight the players, they usually have a little bit of carte blanche to kill people.
Okay.
Thrift Store LARPer says, yeah, going from real weapon fighting to LARP fighting is hard because a lot of moves are not allowed in LARP for safety. Yeah, that's true. Flails are a great example. So flails are a cool looking weapon. In real life, I don't know that they were excessively popular, but they definitely existed and they were used. How widely, I don't know. But LARP, you really can't use flails because of that, that pendulum motion that you get, the
Right.
momentum. So, the whole reason that a flail is effective as a weapon is because it multiplies the force
Right.
of the striking head. That chain whipping back and then whipping forward is even stronger than just having a long handle on a mace and hitting somebody
Right.
with it. So even if you were to make a flail that had like a soft spongy foam head, if you really gave it a whack and someone missed it, missed blocking it or whatever, you could do some damage
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Not to mention the chain can wrap around someone's wrist or their weapon or their shield or whatever, pull them off balance. It can wrench your wrist. It can trip people. All kinds of issues.
Right.
So with LARP fighting, they really have to consider all those safety things, and there are some weapons that just aren't going to be allowed.
Yeah.
So
That makes sense. Safety first.
Thrift Store LARPer says even some staff moves I learned in Wushu, which is a type of martial art, you can't do in LARP for safety reasons. Yeah, so anything that relies on thrusting attacks are extremely strictly regulated. You have to have weapons built to very specific criteria in order to be able to thrust at somebody with it.
Right.
Because if I take a standard LARP sword and I, stab somebody with it, the first time is probably going to be fine. It's a little bit on the hard side. There's not much give in the foam, and so it can, it can hurt, especially if they're running towards you, you're running towards them, and you poke them.
Right.
But it's probably not the end of the world. The real problem is that starts to break down the foam at the end of the weapon,
Yeah.
and eventually the fiberglass core that's in there splits through it, and then you end up impaling somebody with the fiberglass core. And if you are doing that at the wrong time, right as they're leaning back and you catch him in the underside of the throat or in the face or whatever, I mean, you can have some serious problems. So lots of safety concerns when it comes to that.
Yeah. So is it like when you're fighting, are you, again, you're trying to, if you're like in combat, you're trying to win in the scenario.
Right.
But are you like kind of expected to sort of telegraph your movement, or like you're not trying to go like full out to just like completely destroy somebody, right? I mean, you're trying to like kind of give them a heads up type of thing, or is it?
So that's again where it kind of depends on the game.
Okay.
So like one of the really popular combat LARPs that's widespread is called Amped Guard.
Right.
I think one of your sons, at least have played it. And in that one, it's actually more SCA style fighting where you're just going for the win and you're trying to hit as hard as you can, as fast as you can.
Yeah.
That's not the style of combat game that I'm really a fan of. I like more story-based games, and usually those have a slower combat system and a lighter combat system as well. So Dying Kingdoms, the game that I play in primarily, or used to play in primarily, I haven't been back in a while, they have a slower combat system where the rule is you can do one swing per weapon per second. And so you don't have to telegraph your moves or anything like that. You can still fight as best you can to try to defeat the other person, but it's meant to be more cinematic, because if you come in with weapons and you're just doing this, like it's not really that epic looking when you're looking at it from the outside.
Right.
But if you have kind of a beat, like a cadence or a rhythm to it, where I come in and I swing my sword and then I have to take a step back to like prepare for my next attack, and then that gives you a chance to attack me, and we kind of go back and forth like that. When you're looking at it from the outside, a fight can look much more professional, much more choreographed, and much cooler as a result. So you can get people who don't go out and practice their fighting technique a lot, who are still able to feel at the end of the day like, man, that was a really good fight. I really put my all into it and fought well. Yeah, exactly. So that's a big philosophy for Dying Kingdoms. Other games have a lighter combat style, meaning they're using lighter weapons.
Okay.
And they allow for faster swinging, and they're not so much worried about the cinematography of it as they are, getting in there and just being quick and defeating the other person.
Okay.
So I'm a huge fan. Like I was saying, I was a huge fan of the sword and shield fighting, just because it really gives you that opportunity to do the back and forth, where you can do some fun stuff with attacking around somebody's shield with if you swing at the right angle, as well as you can block their sword and attack their arms. And I think it's the most cinematic just because it gives more opportunity for the back and forth, but that's me.
Yeah. Everybody's
got different opinions. And then, so Thrift Store LARPer says roleplay roles. Love those juicy RPs. Yeah, that's why people LARP. I mean, if you want to do combat, there are tons of organizations you can go and you can do the combat. If you want, LARP combat that's a little bit harder, a little bit faster, go to Amped Guard. If you want slightly more historically accurate stuff with the full armor, go to the SCA. If you want steel weapons with the historical accurate armor, go to the something called Adrian Empire. All kinds of stuff out there for people. But really, for me and for a lot of people who LARP, the RP part of LARP is what draws them.
Right.
And people will get into character. They'll design their entire costume from the ground up for this one specific character. They'll have face paint and makeup and prosthetics and
that's awesome.
Special props that they made themselves. One lady in the Dying Kingdoms game, she actually made a lute out of foam.
Oh wow.
And so she could use it as a weapon, but then after combat she could actually put a little speaker in there and it would play lute awesome. Music, and it was super professional looking. She's awesome.
That's cool.
She once we asked her to do like a little wolf kind of like idol, and she took a block of foam, used a butter knife, carved a howling wolf like kind of visage out of it, and then spray painted it so that it had like a rocky texture, and she did it in like an hour and a half with a butter knife.
Wow.
I was disgusted.
Yeah.
Impressed but disgusted.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Panic Roll says, Casher, this one's for you. Today, Leia found a baby squirrel and very gently brought it to me, not harming it in the slightest. We found its home after. Aw, that's awesome. Leia's such a good girl. Cheeky Ellie, cosplayers and LARPers are some of the most amazing craftsmen and artists. I can agree with that. Actually, I know a lot of cosplayers, now that I've started going conventions more, that for whatever reason, they don't do LARP. And I met a lot of LARPers who don't do cosplay. And you would think, like, the overlap there is, I mean, it's right there, staring you in the face. And I'm not quite sure why they don't overlap more.
It's probably more of a I'm unfamiliar with type thing, you know what I mean? And they just don't realize that.
That's possible, yeah.
There's something there for them.
It's probably also, to a certain extent, budget constraints.
Sure.
Because being a cosplayer is expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Being a LARPer who makes their own stuff, that's going to be expensive. Trying to do both is probably a little bit tougher. But yeah, cosplayers are great. They're super talented people. I'm just constantly blown away with the kind of stuff that they do.
Yeah, I'm jealous of all that.
Yeah. But anyways, so Escondido Renaissance Fair, I think again coming up end of April, beginning of May. So if you want to try out a smaller fair as your first event, check that one out if you're in the area. Otherwise, there's the Irwindale event that happens yearly up in Irwindale, California. You'll have to Google that one. I don't know the dates or anything, but that one's a good event too. It's just a little bit bigger. It can be a little bit overwhelming if it's your first time. Oh, I spent an hour finding its home. That's funny. Thirster Larper says being a nerd is expensive. Yeah, it is. It doesn't matter what flavor of nerd you are. If you're a computer nerd, computers get expensive. If you're a D&D nerd, all the books, the minis, all the other stuff, that gets expensive.
There's no cheap nerddom.
There's no cheap nerddom. Even if you wanted to just play Magic. Well, I guess Magic the Gathering Arena now, you can probably play Magic fairly cheap. They still try to draw you into the transactions, but it's easier to avoid using that. Thirster Larper. Oh, Irwindale is going on right now through May. That's good to know. I actually might have to check it out. Cheeky Ellie says LARPers build their character as they do their gear. Yeah, I can agree with that. I know a lot of LARPers who take the concept for their character and they use that to inform their costume and their prop decisions. And then alternatively, they'll be like, oh, here's a cool prop or a cool weapon that I want to use. And then they will kind of tweak their character around that.
That's cool. I like that.
Yeah, it's an evolving thing. And that's one of the reasons I love the RP side. Is just because, when I'm assigned an NPC role and they're like, okay, here's your motivation, go out and do this. 99% of the time I'll go out to do that thing and the players will ask me about everything other than that thing.
Right.
And I kind of have to spitball it. I'm here because my child was cursed and I'm trying to break a curse and I don't know, I'm trying to come up with something that's not the standard, I'm just a bandit. And then, of course, that leads the players off onto this whole extra thing where they try to solve my problems for me, and
you're apologizing to the people. I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the plot members are just like, "What are you doing?" Actually, I remember my very first LARP event, not the one I played a character in, but I NPC'd, and it's where I met a lot of the people from Dying Kingdoms and decided to go over that game. But it was my first time NPCing, and they basically were like, "Okay, you're a wraith or a wight or some kind of undead creature. Go out there, fight the PCs." And I was like, okay, cool. They gave me the gear, the costume, all that stuff. They give me my stats. And I go out there, and I keep running into player characters that are just by themselves, or there's two of them, and I'm able to defeat them. And they told me something about, resurrection or something, and it was a big event game. It was on Halloween weekend. It was at this Boy Scout camp where they had a big fort. They really built it up to be this is an important game. It's dangerous. There's a high risk for players to die. And so when I went out there and I dropped a player, they were like, you have to have an intact body to resurrect them. And I was like, well, I don't have a plot member here to stop me or to tell me what I should be doing. And I just dropped this player character who doesn't have any friends around. I guess I cut your head off and throw it in the river so they can't resurrect you and go about my way.
Yeah.
And I did that to 3 people, and plot came to me and they were like, you can't do that. The players aren't ready for that kind of thing tonight. That's supposed to happen tomorrow night. So I kind of threw a monkey wrench into the whole thing. But it was a lot of fun.
Keeping everybody on their toes, that's all.
It made people scared to go outside of the fort that night. They were like, do not go outside by yourself. Everybody stay here. So that was my mistake. I'm not proud of it.
Yeah, you are. You are a little bit. I can hear it in your voice.
I'm a little bit proud of it, just because they were like, who is this guy? He's crazy. But anyways, so Panic Girl says no mercy. Yeah, exactly. I heard that in the voice of General Kale from Willow.
Yeah.
No mercy! Anyways.
Another cool helmet that isn't practical.
Yeah, really cool helmet. The like skull face mask, like visor thing was awesome. Cheeky Ellie says, comics ate up all my babysitting money.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
I remember getting into comic books through the X-Men animated cartoon. And then from then on, my sister and I would always walk up to like the corner drugstore in the center of town. And they had one of those spinner racks of comics. Every month we'd go up there with like $5 to $10, and we'd buy as many issues as we could, specifically of X-Men.
That's funny.
Man, good. It was a good time for the X-Men comics. Yeah. They were awesome. Thrift Store LARPs, it's a great story. I was there. That's right, you were there. Oh, and Morgan was there, and Morgan was kind of my mentor at the time, telling me like, oh yeah, so this is what we do. This is how we, blah blah blah. And she was the one who kind of came to me and was like,
yeah, no, you're doing it all wrong.
No. You should not be doing this. So, but they were cool about it. They were just like, yeah, so plot fixed it. Don't worry, but for the future, don't do that.
That's funny.
Is it my fault? Sounds more like a big gap in the ST camp. No, I mean, I think it's the kind of thing where they just weren't expecting me to go out and be that zealous about it. And because it was my first event, I probably was a little bit too enthusiastic. But anyways, Chiquila says dial it back a little. Yeah, exactly. All right. So, anyways, we've geeked out enough about various Ren Fair, Game of Thrones, LARP-related topics. Let's get into the actual comic book stuff. So we're going to switch over to Ravensdale Writes Comics real quick. I'm going to put you on mute for about 15 to 30 seconds, and then we'll be back in a moment. All right, so we are back. Let's... Where is it? Here we go. All right, so you should see our camera for the artwork. It's a little bit off-center.
I'll get it back centered in a second.
No problem.
One thing.
Yeah, so it'll go back up in the center frame here in a moment. Cheeky Ellie, I got to sign off and get some sleep. Nice chatting. Thanks for joining. Get some rest, and we will hopefully see you next time. Sorry for the late start tonight. You turned it up to 11 and broke the knob off. Yeah, kind of. But hey, I learned, and I never did it again. That I can remember. Actually, I've been assigned to some really good like RP heavy combat roles in a couple different LARPs. There was one where I was assigned to basically be this. I was a witch, but I was in plate armor with a sword and shield, and I specifically went in and challenged a lady who was playing kind of a paladin style character, so she also had sword and shield and plate armor, and we had an awesome fight. And like apparently she was talking about it with her boyfriend who was also at the game for months afterwards.
That's cool.
So that always makes me feel good when I give someone a memorable moment in LARP. But we are back with Procyon. Now, we actually gave him a little bit of a makeover. More, Samson did, I should say. So he was red and blue. We've decided to update, so he's a little bit less Superman-y. We decided to go orange and blue. Orange and blue are Sarah and I's favorite colors, so it's kind of a nice way that worked out. I don't know if you considered that.
No, that's awesome. Right. That's cool.
And I think it looks great, honestly. I think the orange and blue is a really good color scheme, color combo. It makes the white symbol on the chest pop out really well.
I agree.
So, yeah. And another reason for this was because we didn't want him to be too Superman-esque, but you had mentioned, Samson, that the NASA logo or the NASA colors tend to be blue and orange.
Right. Like usually the logo is I think it's usually in orange, and then there's blue somewhere in the background, I think. Like the navy blue.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it ties into the story. His dad was an astronaut, so
exactly.
It makes sense.
So the blue and the orange make sense because they're NASA colors. So, yeah, it's thematic, and it is a little bit more visually distinct from Superman. Casher, I really, really like the new colors. Awesome. Thank you. Good to hear that.
Yeah, definitely.
Everybody else, feel free to chime in if you like. I'm still waiting until we get to the point in the comic book where he has the mustache.
Yeah.
Because in the card art he does, but in the comic book he doesn't yet. He's too young for that. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I was wondering if I should try, as we're progressing through his kind of story, the little peach fuzz.
The peach fuzz on the upper lip. That'd be kind of funny. I'm not opposed. But yeah, so that's the tweak to his colors and his costume. Panicle, I think it looks cool. Good to know.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, Samson, what do you got there? What are we working on?
So, I didn't get as far as I was hoping to with this, but what I did is I blew up one of the layouts that I had. I believe this is like page 3 or 4 of basically... Oh, no, this is page 3. Where it's his father's funeral and then kind of some key events in his life going through where he's kind of discovering his power. And I just kind of want to show you guys how I do this. Normally what I do is I blow this up from the index card size. And again, I just ink it with a ballpoint pen. And then what I do is I throw this on a light table and kind of just roughly sketch out. You can see it's really, really rough, kind of where everything fits. And then I'm going to go back in now so I don't have to worry about layout or making it fit on a panel or anything. I can just concentrate on the art.
Right.
So that's where I'm at on this one. And I'm going to start getting into the rendering of it now.
Awesome. So he's going to keep working on detail. I like it. Looking at it when it was small scale, I thought it looked good. Now that it's blown up, I think it looks even better.
Good. That's awesome. So I did you and I were talking about the funeral scene being a little bit different. So what I did on this bigger one is I actually pushed the grave down a little farther so it's not so kind of
taking up as much of the panel.
Right.
Yeah.
And what I did, we talked about having a headstone in there, and you can see I kind of did that on the smaller version. But what I thought would be really good to do was actually have a picture of his father.
Oh yeah.
On the thing with probably put a flower wreath or something on it.
Right, and then have his name underneath it,
right.
So it's really prominent.
Yeah.
That actually I think works even better than
right.
the tombstone, because you do see those at a lot of funerals
right.
and stuff like that where it's got the almost like the poster
yeah.
glamour shot of the person.
Yeah.
So I think that works well. I like that.
I was trying to figure out how to do this, and I can't remember what I was watching, but there, a show came on and it was there, and I was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? That's right
nice.
there. Yeah.
Take inspiration where you can.
Yep.
I love it. That's the idea. It's not stealing; it's being inspired by.
Right.
But no, I think it looks good. I like that. That panel especially, I think, turned out better in the large version, even better than it was in the small version.
Nice.
So it looks good. Panic Girl says, Samson, what you call rough, I call a good drawing. Yeah, I have to agree. Like, it would take me hours to do anything remotely like that, but that's what comes from years of practice, so.
Yeah, just the main thing I'm concerned with when I'm transferring it over is just, again, making sure it fits. Then I can go back in and hopefully,
add in detail and stuff
hopefully
like
get
that.
something amazing out of it. We'll see what happens.
Oh, you will. We saw some of your blown up pages for the other comic we're working on in the previous stream, and those looked great.
Yeah, I'm really happy with how that's turning out.
All right, so we showed off Procyon's new threads. We showed off the blown up version of the page. Let's go ahead and scroll down on the script and see where we're at. So, page 13, the bad guy attacked Procyon, kind of the first time meeting him. And I don't think we came up with an official... Oh, you know what we have to do? We have to vote on the guy's name.
Yeah, that's right.
We should have put that up at the beginning. I meant to... So this is a failure on my part. There is a Twitch extension that lets you put up polls and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
I should have done that so that we could have put it up at the very beginning and gotten people's take on it.
Maybe we should do it next stream to get more
Maybe.
input. I mean,
Maybe.
I don't know if we need to figure it out right now.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, at least pose it to folks who are here so they can weigh in. Panic says, what size sheets are you working with?
These are 11 by 17 Strathmore Bristol board. You can buy them.
Those are words, but they didn't mean anything to me.
So it's 11 by 17 inches. Strathmore's like the brand. It's just like a preferred brand for me. And Bristol just means it's really smooth. So when I'm inking it, the pen's not going to get caught. Because I use, for when I'm inking it, and I'll probably do a little bit of that next week for you guys, I use a brush to ink, and I also use like a quill pen. Mm-hmm. So it has to be smooth, because if that gets caught, like it'll bounce around and splatter ink and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then I also use like some, like Pigma microns and just kind of any pen that like feels comfortable.
Right.
So, but I really like the quill. I like the line width control you have. Like you can go from thin to thick really easy with it.
Very cool.
So,
see, that's the kind of thing where I think I actually tried a quill pen in an art class in high school, and I struggled with it because I had a hard time controlling whether it was going to be a thick or a thin line.
yeah.
So I imagine that's something that just takes a lot of practice to
Oh, yeah.
kind of get down. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't really actually get a grip on it until I was working at Legoland doing the caricatures.
Okay.
Because you're given this marker, it's like, it's got like a really weird tip on it, but you've got to learn how to do that. Like, and the pressure's intense because the person's sitting right there. And,
Right. You have to do it in less than 5 minutes, right? Yeah. That's
so
crazy.
that's really kind of where I think I refined it. That job actually helped a lot in so many ways.
Yeah.
That, I didn't make any money while I was there, but the benefits are still paying off. So
Right. Good experience.
Yeah.
They pay you in exposure. Or no, they pay you in experience. They pay you in something that's not actual money.
Yeah.
But, All right, so for those of you who were not tuned in last stream, we are trying to figure out what name we want to give to a particular character. He's a villain. He is right here. This dude kind of has, control over Earth. He can, in this particular instance, in the defense card art, he is pulling up bits of rock to deflect some arrows that are being shot at him. So he can do that. He can create, large mounds of earth. He can hit people with, flying rocks and things like that. So he basically has telekinetic control over Earth. We may be adding in, fire as well. He actually has kind of some smoke billowing around his feet, so it's not like it's not kind of established in the card art.
Right.
So we're trying to decide on a name. We've got 3 names that were proposed last time that all worked out pretty well, or that all sounded pretty good. So there's igneous, which is, of course, a type of rock. There's Shatterstone, suggested by Panic Roll. And then Kashira recommended or suggested Pyroclast. They're all great names for an Earth-based supervillain. The question is, which one do we like more? So if you have thoughts on that, please chime in the comments, and we will use that to influence our decision. It won't be the defining aspect of the decision, but it will at least lead us in the right direction. So please chime in and let us know. going to put that in the chat as well so that it's kind of hanging out there for people to look at. There we go. All right, so Thrift Store LARPer says Shatterstone keeps ringing in my noggin. There is a character in the X-Men X-Force comics called Shatterstar. So if it sounds familiar, it might be because of that. But I like the sound of it. Shatterstone just sounds good. And then Panic Girl says, the more I look at them, the more I like Pyroclast, which is funny because you're the one who suggested Shatterstone. But it's good to get feedback and input either way. So, all right, so let's get into writing out the next kind of page. I'm going to do some formatting. It's kind of some of the drudge work of doing a comic. So apologies if it's not terribly exciting, but I need to make sure that the page numbering is correct so that I don't throw myself off as I proceed. But that'll give people time to chat about their preferred name. So this is 15. Insert break, page break, and 16. I'll just go up to 3 pages for right now because I doubt I'll get through even 1 full page in this session, but we'll see what happens. So in page 13, our yet unnamed Cashier says Shatterstone is really cool. Thrift Store LARPer says, yeah, it does sound good. Okay, so that's 2 for Shatterstone. What was your preference, by the way, Samson? Did you have a preference?
I kind of liked the Pyroclast because the whole, like, you know, kind of where he's at currently in the story, so he could kind of be responsible for, like, it lends itself well to the story for him kind of maintaining and starting the fires.
Right. Well, but he wasn't the one who started the fire.
Right,
so, like...
But I could see him kind of being, like, you know, they're kind of getting put out as he's going along, so he's kind of making sure they're going type of thing. I don't know. They do all sound great, and I default to you wise chatters.
I think I love Pyroclast as a name. I don't know that I like Pyroclast for this character. I think I like Shatterstone more.
Yeah.
And I think I like the idea of him being kind of solely focused on, like, Earth control style powers.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Personally. So... All right. You know what? We're going to go with it.
It's official.
It's official. This is his name. I'm going to change it in the document. Hi, Ewa. Come on. It wouldn't be a Ravensdale Writes Comics if we didn't have a cat joining us. Come on. You're okay. There. Hi. Yeah, you're so cute. She has such a quiet meow. Unless, well, not always. Right now she does. Sometimes she can get a little bit loud. So, Shatterstone. We're going to have to make a note that these are other possible names. Still available names. Whoops, I got caps lock on. Available names. Igneous. Pyroclast. So, say again. Ayla? She's so cute. Hi. Sadly, she does not like it when I pick her up and show her on camera. She hasn't had the chance to put on her face yet, so. Good girl, Ayla. Yeah, she's a beautiful cat. I just wish she would let me show her off. Yeah, there we go. All right, so Shatterstone. So let's get back in there and let's update that page with the character's name to make it super duper extra official. Page 13. Oops. My Google Doc is getting crazy. Had to fiddle with the formatting a little bit. Boom, there it is. It's official. He's written into the script. We can't change it now.
Nice.
It's written in stone.
Ah.
Get it? All right, so page 14. So Procyon kind of gets his bell rung. Shatterstone summons like a column of rock underneath his chin and deals him a pretty nasty uppercut, knocks him on his butt. At this point, hi, yeah, I'm sorry, I gotta get back to writing the comic book. I have a deadline. What do you want from me? Yeah, good girl. You can tell I'm protesting really, sincerely here. Hi, sweetie. Yeah, good girl. Okay. So, would Procyon immediately get up and fight back, you think? Or would he be kind of caught off guard and, confused?
Ooh.
I kind of feel like he's young enough that he probably would just be like, dude just punched me, I'm going to punch him back.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's young and he's kind of gung-ho.
Right.
I could see that response being... But I could also see, how many other superpowered people as he ran into could be kind of confusing for him. But I think, maybe he's ask questions later kind of guy.
Yeah.
Especially at this point.
So maybe it's not so much that he fights back. He doesn't even have to necessarily be confused. Maybe he just... Shatterstone continues with the attack, and he just kind of reacts for this next page. Showcasing some of the powers that he has to kind of, deal with the situation.
Okay.
Then, on the next page, he actually starts fighting.
Okay.
Panic Girl says, I think he would be dazed for a moment. Yeah, I can agree with that. He's definitely kind of caught on the back foot, but he's not going to just sit back and get pummeled for the next page. He's going to, at least defend himself. Presses the attack. So Shatterstone is not trying to kill Procyon. Just distract / immobilize him. So actually, I think the first panel, kind of classic, Earth controller ability in the comic books, a giant hand made out of rock, basically reaches up out of the ground and grabs Procyon.
Nice. That sounds like fun.
So I'm just going to do general panel descriptions right now, and then I'll circle back around to them and I'll add in more detail. But I don't want to get too bogged down in detail just yet. I kind of want to pace out the page so that I know what all is going to go on this page and how we're going to continue on to the next one. Well, we've already established the fact that Procyon can phase earlier in the comic. So I think the easiest way for him to get out of this would just be to phase out of it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Phases. Through the hand. It kind of floats up. Away from the ground. So next panel, panel 3. How do I want to say this? This hand swings at him, basically.
Attempts to thwart him or, I don't know, pummel.
So the hand basically swings at him, kind of like trying to slap him out of the air.
Kind of like a swatting motion
Yeah,
type thing.
there you go, swats it. There we go. And I think at that point... Are we going to show off more kind of like physical powers, or should we show off more variety of powers? and have it be one of those things where he's like, I've never done that before. I'm surprised it worked.
I think we should definitely hold back a little bit.
Okay.
But I do think it is a good, he's in the middle of the fight. Let's see what he can do.
Okay. I think maybe not yet. I think, like, when he's attacking Shatterstone, I think that's when he'll be like, I'm going to try something a little bit different.
Okay.
And, he can manifest it that way. Panic Girl says, remember the first time I was punched, I launched into a wild flurry back. Immaturity caused it. Yeah, I can see that. Like, not everybody responds rationally to someone punching them.
Yeah, I think I cried the first time I got punched. I'm pretty sure that's what happened.
I'm trying to think, have I ever really truly been punched by somebody? I don't think I have.
Oh, that's.
I think anytime I was ever in a fight situation, I was able to, kind of de-escalate.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool.
But, I mean, I've been hit in the face with swords. If you want to count like that as fight experience,
so why not? Still getting hit.
All right, so. Should we just have Procyon fly through the hand and causing it to explode? Like he doesn't just punch it; he flies into it.
Just straight through it, coming out. Yeah, that sounds kind of awesome. Yeah.
So he's superhero flight pose. All right. So hold on a second. How many panels is the previous page? It's 4 panels. This one's 4 panels. The one before that is 5 panels. I don't necessarily want to add another panel. Fine. It's going to be fine. There are 2 pages in a row that have 4 panels.
No.
The next one is going to have to be a different number of panels. Otherwise, it's going to drive me crazy. Panic roll counts. Hey, Sarah Grimm. How's it going? Thanks for joining. Good to see you tonight.
Hey.
We have some art for you. We'll be sending it in the next couple of days. So look forward to that.
I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, we hope you like it. Yeah, good girl. My cat is leaning heavier and heavier against my leg, trying to get my attention. So at least she's not being loud about it. That's kind of nice. Doing fine, just chilling. Good to hear. All right. So previously, Shatterstone said, sorry, kid, we need to keep this fire hot just a little longer. So, it's going to say, it says, sit tight, you'll be free in a minute, or something along those lines. We may tweak that. Procyon, internal. I don't know who this guy is, but
Something just happened.
Panic Roll subbed. Awesome. Thanks very much, Panic Roll. Appreciate that.
Oh, cool.
That's great. Actually, you are our 2nd official subscriber. So we had someone subscribe in the off time between last week and this week. So you're our first on-screen subscriber. Thank you very much for the sub and for following us in general. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Woot woot! And actually, Panic Roll now has a little star icon next to his name, so you will stand out even more in chat.
Nice.
So that's awesome. That cat gif is too adorable. What cat gif? Oh, that's right, the one of this for the subscriber, our little notification guy. It's pretty cute. All right, so Procyon says, I don't know who this guy is, but I know one thing for sure, and he's then gonna say. picked a fight with the wrong... Is he just going to come out and say superhero? Is he going to say... Is he going to be a little bit more informal than that? You picked a fight with the wrong dude? Or is he just going to say you picked the wrong fight?
I don't know. This is a lot of character. This is where I'm horrible. This has got to be you that decides this, because I would probably throw a cuss word in there. But
I think he's going to say you picked a fight with the wrong superhero. Yeah, I'm kind of torn on the subject of like cursing in the comic.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't want to do it, because that lessens your audience.
I think there's anything wrong with it if it's done strategically. Like in the other comic we're working on, that character, she swears a little bit more often. Like she says "damn" and stuff like that. Damn and hell, which aren't, I guess, really curse words when you get right down to it. They're so tame these days. But it's something that I keep in mind. Sarah, I've been learning some language today and encouraged me to create my own language. Oh God, that's an undertaking. You're gonna be the next J.R.R. Tolkien, huh? That's pretty awesome. What language have you been learning? I've tried to learn languages in the past. I took some French in school. I took some Spanish. I used the Duolingo app to learn a little bit of German. I went to Egypt at one point, so I learned a little bit of Arabic, so I could do basic communication there. I went to Norway, so I've learned a little bit of Norwegian when I was going up there. But never anything super serious or anything that I was really good at. I don't know about you.
I feel like it's a theme, but I know how to cuss in a lot of languages. But I feel like that and like asking for food is what's important.
Yeah, for the most part.
I don't know. I guess I'm a simple creature.
Nothing wrong with that. What about everybody else? What languages do you speak? So, I don't know who this guy is, but I know one thing for sure, and he's going to say, you picked a fight with the wrong superhero. So he kind of says the first part internally in the one panel, and then he says it... Oh, you're okay. You're okay. So we'll take out the dialogue from panel 4, so it just shows him, like, flying through the hand and destroying it. Do I need to get more descriptive than that? I don't really think I do, because a lot of that's going to depend on like how you draw the previous page, like what the exact environment looks like. I don't think it needs to have much else going on right now.
Yeah, I got a pretty well-established area that they're in.
Okay.
Which I don't have those with me right now, but I can show you later. So
okay.
It's pretty defined.
Cool. In that case, I won't add in any more elements, so you don't have to go through and tweak too much. I think it's fine the way it is. Once we get into like later stories or even later pages, the fight scenes will get a little bit more crazy. There'll be more environmental stuff going on, but for right now, we're gonna stick with it. French, Russian, Japanese, Navajo, and High Valyrian. Jeez, Game of Thrones language. Okay, yeah. That's a pretty significant list. You were trying to learn all of those at the same time? I cannot imagine that is easy. Thrift Store LARPer says, my Japanese has faded. I used to translate songs into Sindarin. Elven. Yeah, that's right. I remember that, actually.
That's cool.
If I remember correctly, Thrift Store LARPer, you actually spoke a fair amount of Elvish at one point. I don't know if you still do. I know we had talked on one of our LARP groups about, like, setting up, like, a study group for learning to speak Elvish. My mom actually knew Klingon for a long time.
That's cool.
Yeah. She, I don't know if she was, like, fluent, but she knew enough that she could, like, have short conversations with other Star Trek fans in Klingon.
One of my favorite ever Comic-Con moments, this was, like, when I first started going, back when you could buy a ticket at the door. I had convinced my parents to go, so this was a long time ago.
Right.
And we were third in line.
Okay.
And the guy in front of us, it was him and his buddy, they were just chatting, I was just chilling with my parents, and a couple of Klingons walked by, and the guy in front of us was like, dude, watch this. And I don't know what he yelled at him, but he yelled at something Klingon, and I was like, oh my god, this guy's gonna get stabbed. Like, it was the craziest, it turned into a whole scene, but it was like, I was like, yes, that's like one of the moments that I love about Comic-Con. So
yeah.
Stuff like that happens, it's so great.
That's funny. But yeah, nerds come together, everybody lets their freak flag fly. I can never say that right the
freak
first
flag?
time. Freak frag. And yeah, you get some funny interactions from people. Casher says, that's cool. I love hearing what languages people know or are learning. Yeah, languages are just such a cool thing. I really am disappointed that America's education system doesn't emphasize it more. Just because we're such an interconnected global community at this point that being able to communicate with people in other countries speaking other languages is only going to make America stronger as a country. So it's kind of disappointing that they don't focus more on it. Thrift Store LARPer says, not a lot now in regards to Elvish. I've been too busy and not playing many elves. I can see that. Like, it's good to break out of your kind of like your not like your rut, but you know, like if you play a lot of a certain type of character for a while, or even just a couple in a row, it's good to kind of like try something else entirely for a little bit.
Mix it up.
Yeah, you gotta mix it up. Otherwise, like, I do know some LARPers who only ever play one type of character, and so it kind of just ruins the immersion when you're like, oh, this person's old character retired, their new character is basically just a reskin of their old guy. So, but anyways, Catcher says, I know French, Italian, some German, some Norwegian, some Arabic. My Japanese has faded quite a lot.
And I got a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah, I really need to like buckle down and actually learn one language or another. I mean, my wife is French Canadian, so I should probably learn some French. You know, it's right there. So
plus, it's a beautiful language. I really love the way French sounds.
Me too.
It's just so pleasing on the ears.
For me, I like the oddly enough, I like the Canadian like accent speaking French a little bit more. Like the Parisian accent is very. I'm sorry to anybody out there who's from Paris. The Parisian accent is actually really dirty sounding, and it's not particularly pleasant. Other parts of France are a little bit better, though.
I don't know enough to distinguish between the two, so I wouldn't know what I'm hearing. But
and that's fair.
Yeah, you're probably right, though. I mean,
maybe it's that the Parisian accent is so snooty that
that's kind of where I was going to go.
Yeah. So, hi, Ayla. Oh, yeah, good girl. Gotta appease the cat. So, page 15, Procyon's just flown through, like, the granite rock, or the granite hand. What's something else that this guy could do?
For Shatterstone, or?
Yeah, I don't want it to be too cliched or, like, kind of, like, rote of a fight. So I'm trying to think of some interesting stuff that he would be able to do with his powers. Obviously, summoning, like, stones to throw and, you know, objects made out of stone. Oh, you know what? Here we go. I know what he's going to do.
No.
So, Procyon goes to fly at Shatterstone and, like, you know, kind of face him mano a mano, and Shatterstone whips up a cloud of, like, dirt, blinding him, causing Procyon to overshoot and, like, collide with a burning tree that, like, collapses on him.
Alright, cool. That's cool. I like that. A little dirt in the eye.
Yep. He's a villain. He doesn't have to fight fair. He can fight dirty. Huh? Because it's dirt. Get it? It's a joke. I do jokes. Let's see. Casher says, I cannot disagree with you. French Canadians are fiercely proud of their French, and rightly so. Heck yeah. But every place has their own dialect accent, and they feel the same. I can agree with that. I know a lot of people who think that, like, the Southern accent is just the best. And in some cases, I do like a good Southern accent. Other times, I'm not a fan. So, you know, it's all relative. Panic Roll, French for whatever reason is very difficult for me to grasp. The sounds all seem to jumble together for me. I can agree with that. I think that's true of most languages where you get fluent speakers who speak really quickly. It can be very difficult to actually make out distinct words if you're not very familiar with the language. Even Spanish, which I've heard people speak Spanish pretty much my whole life. Being in the military, living on the West Coast a lot. Growing up in Guam. I'm not fluent by any means, but I'm fairly familiar with the language. I still will interact with some people, and it's just a cascade of random noises to me. For those people who speak really quickly. But I really should learn to speak Spanish, quite frankly. It's a good language to have. But maybe one day. French first, Spanish later. Anyways, so Procyon flies towards him. Shatterstone whips up the cloud of dirt. And you know what? I'm actually, before I go into any panel descriptions here, I'm going to move on to the next page and do the action summary for page 16. So I think the previous one can be 3 pages. Makes me feel a little bit better about having too many pages in a row with the same number of panels. I kind of feel like the next one should just be Procyon, like, getting up, like, onto his knees, like, lifting the burning tree over his head. Like, just one page.
Okay, just like a full page.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds awesome.
All right. Kneeling, lifting the burning tree over his head. He looks angry. So that's all we need for that particular page. So actually, rather than getting into any more panel descriptions for this session, I'm just going to toss in a few more pages and a few more action summaries. Again, just to kind of get the pacing of stuff down. I'm all about the pacing. It's important stuff. Page 18. Alright, let's call it there. Alright. So once Procyon, like, picks up the tree, I think he will, like, kind of... I don't know if he's going to go to smash it over the guy's head. He doesn't know what this guy's capable of. He's not going to try to kill him, right? Maybe
more of like a kind of swing it at him and send him flying.
Even that, like, if he's not assuming that the guy has, like, super strength and invulnerability... Like, I think at that point, it's basically like attempted murder if you swing a giant tree at somebody.
But I think he's like mad enough right now that that's not really something he's considering. What if he just throws the log at the guy? Just kind of... Not the log, but the tree itself.
Maybe, how about this? Maybe in the next panel, the guy is like... The guy's using, like, kind of like Iceman's slide, but he's, like, summoning, like, a ramp of earth to try to, like, make some distance between them. Maybe he uses the tree to crush the ramp, like, destroy the ramp.
Okay, that works. Okay. That's good.
So, Shatterstone attempts to get away using a column/slide of rock/ earth. Procyon uses the tree to destroy column/slide, sending Shatterstone tumbling to the ground.
I actually really like that. The whole rock slide thing.
Yeah.
Because it's not typical for like an earth person. Normally they would be like floating on a rock thing.
Yeah,
but
like I know Tara from DC.
Yeah.
She does that. I think Avalanche from Marvel Comics, I think he does kind of like the slide thing a little bit.
Does he?
I don't know it's as much like a signature move of his, but I think I've seen him do it in a couple panels.
Okay.
But still, I think it's...
Yeah,
I think it's,
like it.
Yeah.
It's nice and different.
Panic Girl says, what about a throw near him? Yeah, we could go that route, but again, I feel like... This is something that you always get into with comic book characters. Like... You've got characters who are specifically have invulnerability and super strength, right? Or like super reflexes. And so it makes sense that hitting them with a burning tree, they'd be like, it would knock them for a loop, but they'd be fine ultimately. Or they'd catch the tree and like take it away from him or whatever. But that's making a big assumption against an enemy that Procyon's never met before, and I think he's still hesitant enough to use his powers that he's not going to just try for like throwing the thing at the guy or swinging it at him, because if he does hit him, if he's a normal dude other than being able to control Earth, the guy's going to die. Yeah. So I think Procyon is still hesitant enough to use his abilities that he's not going to just straight up do that. And I feel like that's one of those things that universally for all heroes puts them at a disadvantage when they're fighting a supervillain. Is they don't know what they're capable of. They're not going to go all out because they don't want to kill someone. That's not a very heroic thing to do. Don't kill people, folks. It makes you a bad guy. Anyways, so
PSA.
Yeah, the more you know. And so I think that inherently puts heroes at a disadvantage. And it can be a really good kind of, writing tool for superheroes especially, where they might lose to a villain that is ostensibly less powerful to them because the hero's pulling their punches. They're really playing it safe. And so the villain uses that to their advantage. They play dirty. They fight unfair. And they, kind of sucker punch the hero and they take that opportunity to get away. And then, like, as you establish the villains more, then the heroes kind of know, okay, I can be a little bit more aggressive here, or I can be a little bit more, forceful here, and it's not gonna kill the person. So that's the way I like to approach writing superheroes, personally. I don't know. What do y'all think? Any thoughts on that?
I have no problem with that. I like it. Again, this is something you and I have discussed about the moral dilemma of superheroes, and that lines up perfectly with how I feel as well. So,
and I think obviously there are some heroes who aren't going to care. I mean, like if you're talking a character like the Punisher doesn't care if you're extra bulletproof or not. He's just going to shoot at you, and if you survive the bullets, he's going to shoot at you some more and toss a grenade.
Get a bigger bullet.
And exactly. He'll land a truck on you somehow or whatever. So some heroes are not going to go through that due diligence and worry about the sanctity of life so much. But I think in general most superheroes should, from a storytelling perspective, to really kind of help them maintain that moral high ground, being a hero. All right, so that's going to be for page 17. Page 18, I think, is going to be... So, how strong is Shatterstone, like physically? I feel like he's probably pretty strong.
Yeah.
But this is early Shatterstone. He hasn't reached his full potential yet.
So I would think, actually, he would be more physically strong now than when he is later on. Because later on he's going to be more power strong, I guess, if that makes sense.
Come on.
So he's still kind of in the relying more on muscles than mental.
Do we want to go with the kind of the trope of like as long as he's on the ground he's stronger? I don't think so. I think he's just strong in general.
Yeah, he's just dangerous if there's rock around.
So I think Procyon can still kind of neutralize him by picking him up and flying him high up in the air. He can't like summon any rocks as easily.
Yeah, there's limits to his reach. Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, so it's not that taking him away from the ground inherently makes him lose his powers. It just if he's far enough away, he can't control any rock.
Right.
Okay, I can agree with that. Castro says, cool start, panic roll. Also, I've never really thought about it. My gut reaction is to go full force, hence another tick in the supervillain column. All right, fair enough. Note to self, apparently most of our viewers are villains. Or at least have a villainous streak in them.
Yes.
I guess that's not so bad. Every superhero needs a few good villains in order to really stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer that the villain makes the hero. Like the greater the villain, the greater the hero.
I can agree with that. Thank you for the kisses, but I need my hand back. Thank you. My cat is back. All right, so he destroys the thing. Okay, so here's what I think should happen. I feel like at this point, like he swings the tree, it destroys the slide that he's using, or the column of rock he's using to get away, whatever the case may be. And then I think Shatterstone should like kind of stand up out of the rubble, and he should pick up a big piece of rock and like swing it at Procyon, who then kind of catches it.
Okay.
Kind of like have a moment of them like kind of facing off to see who's stronger.
All right.
So, all right. All right, so I think we'll kind of leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger there. I think that's a good spot to call it. Panic Roll says, "Thanks, Kashra. I think I would go full force too." Great. Thanks for backing me up there, Panic Roll. Panic Roll says, "Ben, that's not your hand. It is her hand. They're for giving scritches on command." Yeah, it's true. Cats really do assume that they just have complete autonomy over your own body. Like, I must be pet now. Pet me. I would like to be scratched on my chin now. Make this happen. I should be fed now. Do it. That's cats in a nutshell. So, Panic Roll's dog Leia brought him a baby squirrel earlier. Our cat, our late cat Merrick's, he would bring us lizards, but not in a nice way. Several times we found lizard parts on our bedroom carpet. It was not pleasant.
But they're gifts.
They are, for sure. He was trying to be a nice cat and be a provider, but he just, you know.
Yeah. That's never.
The expression of it is just a little bit more violent than Leia's. So that's one of the. Not that I love dogs more, but that's one of the reasons I love dogs is that they can just be ridiculously nurturing towards things that you wouldn't expect them to be nurturing towards. And cats can too, for sure. I'm not saying that cats are, vicious monsters all the time, but I just see it more frequently in dogs than I do cats. So, anyways, we're gonna leave it on a bit of a cliffhanger here. So you've got a little bit of a back and forth. Shatterstone takes Procyon off guard. Procyon uses one of the many powers in his grab bag to escape his Shatterstone's clutches, quite literally. Shatterstone fights dirty, again, quite literally. Procyon destroys the method Shatterstone was going to use to escape. End up, swinging a big rock, and they're both kind of struggling to, take it away from the other person or whatever it is they're doing. So kind of ending off, it'll be that kind of classic comic book moment where the two characters are facing off at each other, kind of face to face, straining, sweating, trying to figure out, who's going to win. And then we'll figure out where it goes from there. But next session, we'll circle back around to pages 15 through 18, and we will write out the panel descriptions, we'll write out the dialogue, we'll, fill it all in that way. Before we go, let's circle back over to what Samson's working on, and let's take a look.
All right, so kind of got my layout here for panels 2 and 3.
Okay.
And I didn't get too much farther than that because I was having too much fun and laughing and talking. But so hopefully the goal is to have this page completely penciled and inked up for you guys next week. And I should be working on a different completely penciled page in inks so they can see that process.
Nice. That's awesome. I like what you did with the tricycle there. That actually turned out really good.
Big wheel.
Big wheel. Yeah. Classic. And I gotta say, the leg, the extension on the leg and everything looks really accurate, correct? I've seen a lot of artists struggle with that kind of perspective of an extended leg or an outreached hand or whatever, just because it gets kind of weird to get the perspective and the anatomy right.
Yeah, foreshortening is very difficult.
Yeah.
But again, this is what the benefit of working out smaller is, because once I get it laid out super tiny, and it's easy to redraw over and over because it's so small, then it's easier to just kind of do So a
Smart.
lot of the work's on the index cards.
Right.
So,
Well,
although I did change some stuff. Like the arm was straight here originally. I bent it here because the shoulder looked kind of weird. So
okay.
but yeah,
I can see that. Looks great.
thank you.
All right, making some progress. We're paced out to page 18 at this point. We're looking to kind of target around 22 pages. So I think the fight here will end fairly soon.
Yeah.
Probably page 19, maybe page 20. And then the last couple of pages will be the force of nature, Maelstrom coming back, kind of like, mopping the floor with Procyon because he's pretty tired at this point.
Yeah.
And then kind of ending off with showing Procyon sitting with all the other heroes.
Okay.
And kind of
Awesome.
revealing that he's narrating all this as he's introducing himself to this team of heroes. So yeah, I think that'll work. Cashier says Mare was a wonderful cat, definitely a lizard hunter. Yeah, he was notorious for that. And unlike most of our cats, we would let him outside because he had a bad back, so he couldn't jump over the high fences in our backyard. So we didn't have to worry about him running away. And so we would often just leave the back door cracked open so he could go in and out, even when we were going to work. And he loved it. One of his favorite places to sit was in this patch of grass right underneath our lemon tree. And so we'd come home and we'd look out there, and he'd be totally curled up in, just a little bit of sun on his face, happy as a clam. And then we'd call him, and he'd perk up, and he'd get up, and he'd stretch, and he'd really lazily walk across the yard to us.
Nice.
So he was a great cat.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Cashier says, really good work, Samson.
Well, thank you very much.
I agree. It looks fantastic. I think it's going to come together very nicely. So yeah, thanks very much for joining. Those of you who don't know, you can now subscribe to our channel because we reached our Twitch affiliate status, which we are very, very proud of. Thanks in large part to you guys for tuning in, for chatting, for following. We really appreciate it. You can also cheer. For those of you who don't know, just do a quick Google on how to cheer on Twitch, and that will explain it. Not that you have to, just letting you know it's an option. But just so everybody knows, full disclaimer, as an affiliate, Twitch takes the first $100 that we earn every month, and they use it towards, paying for their infrastructure, their servers, and, their shareholders and stuff like that. So the first $100 of subscribers and cheers doesn't actually come to us as affiliates. We still definitely appreciate it. We will not say not to do it. But if you wanted to send us money directly, you can use the donate button in the link below, or in the links below the actual stream itself. If you feel so inclined, not required. But please do follow us, tell your friends. We really are trying to engage a wider audience and get some more opinions on the comic. So please feel free to share it with folks. Follow us on Instagram. We're at ravensdale.publishing.
That's sour_muse on Instagram.
Yep. And you can check us out on YouTube as well if you want to see some of our past videos. It's ravensdale.publishing. Nice and easy. And we are well on our way. We've got 55 followers, so we're well on our way to our 75 follower goal, where we will do another drawing for art, stickers, and a pin. So again, tell your friends, have them follow us. We'll do another drawing sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
So, Thrift Store LARPer says, I've never watched this process. It's fascinating. Hope to catch more next week. We'd love to have you back. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I will say, little caveat, that this process is one that Samson and I have kind of Frankenstein together. It is not by any means a professional comic book writing process.
Yeah, I'm sure we're doing a lot of stuff wrong.
I'm sure if someone like Jim Lee or any of the professionals watched our stream, they'd be like, why are they doing it? Like, this is ridiculous. But it's the way we're doing it, so,
Yeah.
you can suck it, Jim Lee. No, sorry, I didn't say that. Watch that be the one thing that goes viral from our channel. That would be funny.
I'm just glad I didn't say nothing. It was the writer.
Exactly. Yeah, it was all him. But yeah, thanks again very much for tuning in. I see we just got a couple more viewers right at the end. Sorry about that, but thanks for thanks for jumping into the channel. Make sure you check us out next week, same time, same channel. And yeah, have a great week, everybody. See you Wednesday for some video gaming with me and Sarah. See you, Wednesday at 7.
Yeah.
Peace out. Thanks again.